Do complex legal issues hold you back? Let's get energized and bring clarity to your top legal questions. This is Law Talk with the Flock by Goosmann Law Firm.
Hello, welcome to Law Talk with the Flock. I'm your host, Jeana Goosmann, CEO and Managing Partner of the Goosmann Law Firm, author and business leader, here to help navigate you through your way through the law, your business, and life as a leader. Today I have with me Jeana Eckel, attorney at the Goosmann Law Firm. Welcome, Jean.
Welcome. Thank you for having me here.
I'm excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Is this your first podcast?
No, it's my second one.
Excellent. Well, we're going to have fun here this morning, and I really want to talk about your practice. So let's tell everybody about your practice and what it entails.
Sure. So my practice involves multifamily housing. So that includes helping property management companies and landlords with evictions, reviewing their leases and addendums, and helping defend and teach about fair housing.
Awesome. And I think earlier this week we talked about how your practice is kind of a flywheel. I mean, you've really focused in on this niche.
That's correct. When I joined the Apartment Association of Nebraska, and I kind of drilled down with the industry so I could understand what my clients are dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Excellent. And you have such a great recognition in this area and with the property managers and a really great relationship. Let's talk a little bit about when it comes to their issues, what are some of the things that they deal with?
Primarily what they deal with is just issues involving their tenants, or maybe some situations that come up with fair housing complaints, and really what they need to do to comply with the law so they can address those situations.
And how about evictions? What happens in that arena? I know that has to be a big issue for them.
Right, it is a big issue. It kind of really depends on the type of situation. So a lot of people, when they think of evictions, they think of non-payment of rent. But there's some other issues that come up. There's situations where a landlord or a property manager needs to evict somebody because they didn't comply with the terms of the lease. So maybe someone's throwing parties.
You can't have big loud parties.
No parties.
Nobody in a multifamily property likes that.
That's right. You can't have that. It has to be
You're
very
waking
quiet.
my kids up.
That's
Knock
right.
it off.
Kids is another issue. Kids running around, being noisy, running in the hallways, maybe disturbing other people. Those are the issues that we call the non-compliance. And then there's another one that comes up is the criminal conduct.
Yeah, they're smoking pot in their place.
Smoking pot, or maybe...
Can't do that either.
That's right, can't do that.
Maybe in Colorado, I don't know.
Maybe, but the apartment industry's still against that too.
Okay, good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're doing illegal activity, if they're violating the rules, or they're not paying, and that's what most people think about, is they're not paying.
Those are the big three, yep.
The big three. And as a result, now I've got this situation on my hands. If you're a property manager, what do? You call Jean?
You call Jean. So yeah, you maybe, first thing they need to do is they need to go through their policies, procedures that they have at that company, and look at the lease and see what clauses in that lease is going to apply to that situation. And yeah, then they should call their legal counsel. Absolutely.
And I know the law changes relatively quickly, and so you help keep people current when they have needs in their leases or their policies, and that's one of the other services you provide too, right?
Correct. And one of the things I do as part of the Apartment Association of Nebraska, I'm the chair of the legislative committee. So what we do is we're going to either oppose legislation that's going to affect the industry, or we might draft legislation that we think is going to help us maybe address some situations we didn't think about. And when those laws get changed, we need to communicate that to our clients that are in the multifamily industry.
So really, when working with you, they help stay out front of what the issues are, and you even help lobby for what's good for their industry and maybe what might be bad for it. You lobby against it?
That's correct, both at the local level and at the national level.
So all the way up to D.C.?
All the way up to D.C. I'll be there in March.
All right. Yeah. So you fly out to D.C. once or twice a year in order to meet with the national group too?
Yep. Once a year, the National Apartment Association, we call it Advocacy. So I will go out there and we hit the hill. We go talk to our congressional delegation, and we just tell them what issues are going to affect the industry and how they can help us.
What are some of the hot issues that property managers have to deal with that are additional problems besides the evictions?
One big issue that's coming up is on the fair housing. And a lot of people across the country are dealing with emotional support animals. And that's been a big issue for several years in the industry. And that's what they need to be aware of. The Fair Housing Act is a little complicated.
Okay.
And you might think you're doing the right thing or saying the right thing, and it's wrong. And at that point, you can get into trouble. So what they need to do is they need to go through training. And I think annually, a lot of my clients will have me come in and teach them every year on any updates on the Fair Housing Act, or maybe they just need a refresher, or maybe they have new employees who have not been trained on it, and they need to know what the law is.
So emotional support animals, let's talk about that for a minute.
Okay.
What does that mean?
So an emotional support animal, it really falls under an umbrella. We call them assistance animals. So it could be a service dog, it could be a therapy animal, or it could be an emotional support animal. So they kind of have different things they do for different people. Service animals is typically going to be a dog. And so those are actually, they're trained to do a specific task for someone who suffers from a disability. For example, somebody who might be in a wheelchair. They may not be able to go and get something for themselves. So maybe they may have a service animal that can go grab something from them and bring it to them, or alert them to something that they don't hear. Like if you're deaf, you may not hear a fire alarm. So they will have that animal that will be able to alert them that something's wrong and they need some help.
And those people, if they're going to live in a multifamily property that maybe doesn't allow pets, is that where this comes into play?
Correct. So there's a reasonable accommodation request, and then there's a reasonable modification request. So an accommodation is asking the housing provider, or the landlord as we like to call them, we're asking them to make an exceptions to their policy. So if you have a no pets policy and someone says, hey, look, I need an emotional support animal for my disability, what they're requesting the landlord to do is to make an exception to their no pet policy.
So I have a neighbor lady that has a purse dog. I'm totally going to tell you this story here real quick, because she has this purse dog and she wanted to take it to Target. So she got some sort of license off the internet that she printed. That's not what we're talking about here.
No, and that would be fall under the American with Disabilities Act. So we're talking specifically about animals that people want for their therapeutic needs, only in housing purposes.
Not the purse dog you want to take to Target.
Not the purse dog. Now, the HUD just came out with new guidelines on the 28th of January, which actually addressed on what a housing provider needs to do when there's a request for an assistance animal. And so it was very clear. The letters that people are getting online, that in and of itself is not going to be reliable on its face. There needs to be something else that a tenant's going to need to provide. For example, they need to provide some verification from a healthcare provider that could say, yes, this person's disabled, and they do need this animal, and this animal is necessary for their disability.
And all those rules come into place because you have people like my neighbor who just thinks her dog is cute.
Yeah, that can happen, and that's one of the big concerns in the industry, is that people are going online getting these letters because they don't want to pay for a pet fee or a pet deposit or a pet rent.
Let's go into what are some of your other top tips to avoid in this industry?
I think the one thing is go back to one, having policies in place, written policies, teaching your employees about those policies, and really make sure you're abiding by those policies consistently. That's the number one thing that I would tell people. The other one is make sure you have a strong written lease. You want a lease that's going to try to cover almost all the possible situations that you as a landlord or property manager are going to deal with.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the National Apartment Association?
Yeah, so the National Apartment Association, it has two goals. One, to advocate on behalf of its members. So that means to go and lobby on behalf of the industry. The second thing is to educate. They have a lot of educational components to it. They have certifications they do for someone who's a leasing agent or a property manager or a maintenance technician. They can go take these courses. They have tests, and then they are certified for that position. So that's what the National Apartment Association does. It has affiliates in almost every state and in different localities. So, for example, I'm in the Apartment Association in Nebraska. We are an affiliate of the National Apartment Association.
Wonderful. Well, thanks for all that great information, Jean, and
Sure,
I've
thank you.
appreciated having you on the podcast today.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much for being with us and for listening today. Go make it worth it.
Thanks for joining us for Law Talk with the Flock by Goosmann Law Firm. We hope you feel energized and ready to soar past your goals. Become a Flock fan and subscribe to our podcast for weekly episodes. Learn more at goosmanlaw.com.